What if a single act of kindness could change your life forever? Some moments, no matter how small, have the power to set off a chain reaction that leads to something unimaginable. This is the story of a waitress whose simple gesture of compassion caught the eye of someone who would change her fate forever. Lily Harper had always been a dreamer. At 23, she worked tirelessly at Rosy's Diner, a small, worn-out restaurant in the heart of New York City. The peeling paint on the walls and the flickering neon sign outside mirrored the struggles of its workers. Despite the exhausting shifts and modest wages, Lily never lost her warmth. She had a rare gift, not just for serving food, but for making people feel seen and valued. Her kindness extended beyond the doors of Rosy's. Every night, after clocking out, she gathered leftover food from the kitchen and carried it with her on her way home, handing it to those who had nowhere to go. To Lily, it was just a simple gesture, something she never thought twice about. But to those receiving it, it meant the world. On a particularly cold and rainy evening, Lily tightened her coat around her as she made her way home. The wind howled through the streets, and the rain came down in relentless sheets. As she turned a familiar corner, she noticed a small figure curled up beneath the dim glow of a bus stop shelter. It was a child, no older than 8, his arms wrapped around his knees, his clothes soaked through. Without hesitation, Lily approached. She knelt beside him, her voice soft but firm. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you okay? Where's your family?" The boy lifted his head, his large, frightened eyes meeting hers. He looked exhausted, his lips trembling as he spoke. "I don't have anyone," he whispered. "I'm hungry." A pang of sorrow gripped Lily's heart. She knew what it was like to struggle. She had been in difficult situations before, but nothing like this. Without a second thought, she reached for his hand, gently pulling him to his feet. "Come on," she said. "Let's get you warm." The rain drenched them both as they hurried back to Rosy's. Lily barely noticed the wetness seeping into her clothes. Her only concern was making sure the boy was safe. When they stepped inside, the warmth of the diner embraced them. She quickly grabbed a thick blanket from the storage closet and wrapped it around his small shoulders before rushing to prepare a hot bowl of soup. At first, the boy hesitated, his fingers gripping the spoon with uncertainty. But as the heat spread through his hands and the first taste of warm broth met his lips, his expression softened. A flicker of something Lily hadn't seen before relief. He ate slowly at first, then hungrily, savoring every bite. Lily sat across from him, her heart swelling as color returned to his face. A simple meal, but in that moment, it meant everything. What Lily didn't know was that someone had been watching her. Across the street, a sleek black car sat idling. Its engine hummed softly as the rain drummed against its polished surface. Inside, James Dalton watched the scene unfold. A billionaire businessman known for his sharp intellect and private nature, James had been driving aimlessly through the city, seeking a quiet reprieve from the corporate world he ruled. He had no destination in mind until he saw her. At first, it was mere curiosity. Why would a young woman stop in the pouring rain for a homeless child? But as he watched her lead the boy inside and offer him warmth without hesitation, something in him stirred. He had spent years building an empire, surrounded by wealth, power, and influence. Yet in all that time, he hadn't seen kindness like this, genuine, unfiltered, expecting nothing in return. "Who is she?" he murmured to himself, unable to look away. He reached for a notepad in the glove compartment, scribbling down 2 words, Rosy's Diner. With one last glance toward the glowing diner window, he shifted gears and drove away. But as he made his way back to his luxurious penthouse, the image of Lily lingered in his mind. He had seen many things in his lifetime, acts of greed, ambition, deceit. But that night, he had seen something different, something pure. And for the first time in a long time, he found himself wondering about someone other than himself. Would he ever see her again? Would she even remember this night? He wasn't sure. But one thing was certain. His life had just taken a turn he never expected. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that inspired you? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales like this. James Dalton couldn't shake the image of the young waitress from Rosy's diner. He had spent decades navigating boardrooms, negotiating high-stakes deals, and rubbing shoulders with some of the most powerful people in the world. Yet, none of them had captured his attention the way she did. There was something about her, something unshakable, genuine, and effortlessly kind. In a single moment, she had reminded him of a truth he had long forgotten. Kindness didn't require wealth, power, or influence. It was simply a choice. That realization unsettled him. He had spent years insulating himself from the world, his wealth acting as a barrier rather than a bridge. But now, he found himself wondering about a woman he didn't even know. The following evening, James found himself outside Rosy's diner once more. This time, he wasn't content to sit in the shadows. He wanted to see her up close, to understand what made her different. As he stepped inside, the small brass bell above the door jingled softly, announcing his arrival. The scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries drifted through the air. The place was modest, a little worn around the edges, but inviting. The hum of conversations and the clinking of dishes filled the room. It was comforting, a stark contrast to the sterile, high-end restaurants he usually frequented. Then he saw her. Lily moved between the tables effortlessly, her presence a quiet source of light in the bustling diner. She greeted an older couple by name, refilled an exhausted mother's coffee without being asked, and even crouched beside a little girl who had dropped her fork, replacing it with a fresh one while whispering something that made the child giggle. Every action, every gesture, was filled with warmth. James felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. He had spent a lifetime analyzing people, reading their motives and ambitions like an open book. But Lily? She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't angling for something in return. She simply cared. Before he knew it, he had settled into a booth in the corner. Lily approached with a bright, easy smile. "Welcome to Rosy's. What can I get you?" For the first time in a long time, James hesitated. He had closed billion-dollar deals without blinking. Yet somehow, ordering lunch felt like an impossible task. "Just the special for today," he finally said, clearing his throat. "And maybe a recommendation." Lily's smile widened. "If you're looking for comfort food, you can't go wrong with our homemade chicken pot pie. Best in town." James nodded. "I'll take it." As she walked away, he found himself watching her more closely. This wasn't an act, this was who she was. He had seen many people wear masks in his world, pretending to be something they weren't. But Lily was real. Throughout his meal, he observed her, taking in every small kindness she offered. She treated the struggling young father in the corner with the same warmth as the businessman in an expensive suit. She laughed with the kitchen staff, and never once let the exhaustion in her eyes dull her enthusiasm. James had seen countless people fight for power and influence, but he had never seen someone fight so hard simply to be kind. As he finished his meal, he signaled for the check. When Lily returned, he handed her the bill with a polite nod, then quietly slipped an envelope under his plate before standing to leave. He didn't wait to see her reaction. He didn't need to. He had done what he came to do. And yet, he knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, as Lily cleared the last of the breakfast rush, she found the envelope. Frowning, she opened it and immediately froze. Inside was a thick stack of crisp $100 bills, far more than any tip she had ever received. Her hands trembled as she counted. It wasn't just a generous tip, it was life-changing money. Her mind raced with questions. Who had left it? And more importantly, why? She rushed outside, her heart pounding, but the street was empty. The mysterious man was gone. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. Lily couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. The check for $50,000 sat on her kitchen table, an impossible reality staring her in the face. She traced her fingers over the crisp paper, half expecting it to vanish like a dream upon waking. How could this be real? Could she truly accept such a gift from a complete stranger? She barely knew his name, let alone his true intentions. Doubt crept into her mind. Was there a catch? A condition she wasn't aware of? She had spent years working tirelessly, struggling to make ends meet, and now, in the blink of an eye, Her financial worries could be erased. It didn't feel right. Nothing in her life had ever come this easily. Morning came, and she dragged herself to Rosy's diner for her shift, but the check weighed heavily in her pocket, its presence impossible to ignore. She tried to focus, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and greeting the regulars with her usual warmth, but her mind was elsewhere. What was she supposed to do? Then, the bell above the door chimed, and she looked up. Her breath caught in her throat. James Dalton had returned, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. He moved with a quiet confidence, his presence impossible to miss. He approached her counter, his expression calm, as if he had anticipated her hesitation. "I see you found my note," he said, his voice smooth, carrying a weight of certainty. Lily swallowed, her fingers instinctively tightening around the check in her pocket. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "It's incredibly generous, but I can't accept this." She pulled the check from her apron, holding it out to him. "It's far too much." James chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't have to thank me," he said, refusing to take it back. "And I assure you, it's not too much." He motioned toward an empty booth. "Sit with me for a moment." Hesitantly, she slid into the seat across from him. The diner bustled around them, but in that moment, it felt as if they were the only two people in the room. James studied her for a long moment before speaking. "I've spent years building my wealth, making investments, striking deals. But in all that time, I've never met someone quite like you." He paused, leaning forward slightly. "That night in the rain, you didn't hesitate. You helped that boy without expecting anything in return." Lily frowned, her hands resting on the table. "Because it was the right thing to do. And that's exactly why I want to help you." His voice softened, his expression earnest. "This isn't charity. Think of it as an investment in someone who deserves a break." Lily hesitated, staring down at the check as her fingers traced its edges. "But why me?" James smiled slightly. "Because kindness like yours is rare," he said simply. "And I believe in rewarding it." Lily still wasn't sure, but deep down, something inside her shifted. Maybe, just maybe, this was the opportunity she had been waiting for all along. Lily spent the next few days wrestling with her decision. $50,000 was more money than she had ever seen, and the idea of using it to change her circumstances felt overwhelming. She had always been careful, always struggled to make ends meet, and now, with a single check, everything could be different. But was it too good to be true? She sat at the small kitchen table in their cramped apartment, staring at the check, turning it over in her hands as if expecting it to disappear. The walls around her, covered in years of wear and fading paint, had been her reality for so long. It was hard to imagine anything beyond them. Her younger brother, Ethan, leaned against the counter, watching her. He had depended on her for everything since their parents passed. "What if it's some kind of trick?" she asked, pacing the length of their tiny living room. Ethan shrugged. "What if it's not?" He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. "Lil, you work harder than anyone I know. Maybe it's time you let someone help you for once." She sighed, still unsure. Letting someone help felt unnatural, as if she were breaking some unspoken rule she had lived by all her life. But deep down, she knew Ethan was right. She had spent years making sure everyone around her was okay. Maybe now it was time to take a chance on herself. The next evening, with nerves twisting in her stomach, she stood outside a towering glass office building, Dalton Enterprises. The lights above reflected off the sidewalk, the city humming around her. She took a steadying breath before stepping inside. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile, then led her down a quiet hallway to a private office. The door opened, and there he was, James Dalton. He sat behind an impressive wooden desk, looking just as confident and composed as the last time she had seen him. "I take it you've made a decision," he said, his expression unreadable but his eyes watchful. Lily hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I have." She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze. "I want to use this money to do something meaningful, something that can help others." James leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "Tell me." She took a breath, gathering her thoughts. "I've always dreamed of opening a cafe," she admitted, her voice steadying with conviction. A place where people can find warmth, kindness, and a meal, even if they can't afford it. A slow smile spread across James's face. Now that's an idea worth investing in. With James's unwavering support, Lily poured her heart into making her dream a reality. Every spare moment was spent scouting for the perfect location, walking up and down streets, peering through windows, and imagining what could be. After weeks of searching, she found it, a small but inviting space nestled in a quiet downtown corner. It wasn't flashy, but it had character, the kind of place where people would feel at home. Without hesitation, she signed the lease, a mixture of excitement and anxiety settling in her chest. There was no turning back now. The moment the papers were finalized, she dove headfirst into renovations, pouring every ounce of energy into bringing her vision to life. James made sure she wasn't alone in the process. He connected her with experienced contractors who could transform the space efficiently, business advisors who guided her through the logistics, and even a marketing team to ensure her cafe had the best possible start. It was overwhelming at first. She was used to working hard, but this was different. This was something entirely new. One evening, as they stood in the middle of the nearly finished cafe, the scent of fresh paint lingering in the air, Lily let out a long breath. "I feel like I'm in over my head," she admitted, staring at the counter that would soon be filled with pastries and steaming cups of coffee. James, leaning casually against the doorframe, gave her a reassuring smile. "You're not alone in this, Lily. You have people who believe in you." His words anchored her, reminding her why she had started this journey in the first place. She wasn't just opening a cafe. She was creating a space where people could come together, where kindness would always be on the menu. As the grand opening approached, nerves settled in. The night before, sleep was impossible. She tossed and turned, thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. What if no one came? What if she had made a mistake? But as the sun broke over the horizon, Lily took a deep breath and stepped outside, staring up at the newly installed sign, Harper's Café. It was real. After years of struggle, of dreaming in silence, her vision had finally taken shape. Slowly, people began to arrive. Some were drawn in by curiosity. Others had heard about the opening through word of mouth. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air, welcoming each new guest. She greeted every customer with the same warmth she had always given, just as she had at Rosy's diner, making sure everyone who walked through the door felt at home. What made the cafe special wasn't just the food or the cozy atmosphere. It was its mission. The pay-it-forward system she had envisioned allowed customers to buy meals in advance for those in need. She watched with quiet satisfaction as people embraced the idea, purchasing meals for strangers, writing messages of encouragement on small notes pinned to the cafe's community board. As she glanced around at the bustling cafe, her eyes met James's from across the room. He nodded approvingly, a proud smile on his face. She walked over to him, heart full. "You did this, Lily," he said softly. "And it's only the beginning." Months passed, and Harper's Café became more than just a coffee shop. It became a symbol of hope. People didn't just come for the food. They came for the warmth, the kindness, the sense of belonging that Lily had created. The pay-it-forward system flourished, with customers leaving prepaid meal notes on the board and strangers in need gratefully accepting them. It was a cycle of generosity, and Lily marveled at how much a simple idea had grown into something so meaningful. One crisp autumn evening, as Lily was locking up for the night, she noticed a small figure sitting on the steps outside. The sight stirred something deep in her memory. As she approached, her heart caught in her throat. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Remember me?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide with recognition. His face had filled out since the last time she had seen him, but those same weary eyes still carried the weight of hardship. "You're the lady who gave me soup," he murmured, his voice tinged with both surprise and relief. Lily's smile was warm. "That's right. And now, I run this place. You hungry?" The boy nodded eagerly, and without hesitation, Lily unlocked the door and led him inside. The cafe was dark, but the moment she turned on the lights, the familiar cozy glow filled the space, making it feel like home. She guided him to a table, and as he settled in, she moved behind the counter, ladling a generous portion of soup into a bowl. As she placed the steaming bowl in front of him, the door to the cafe opened again. James stepped inside, pausing as he took in the scene before him. His gaze softened as he watched Lily sit across from the boy, waiting for him to take his first bite. "This," James said quietly, stepping closer, "is exactly why I knew you were the right person." Lily looked up at him, her expression filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. James shook his head. "You could have. You just needed someone to remind you of your worth." She glanced back at the boy, who was eating eagerly, savoring every bite as if it was the best meal he had ever had. The sight filled her with warmth, a reminder of why she had started this journey in the first place. As she sat there, watching him eat, she reflected on everything that had happened. The rainy night that set everything in motion, the unexpected generosity of a stranger, the leap of faith she had taken. What had begun as a single act of kindness had grown into something larger than herself. And in that moment Lily knew, with absolute certainty, that kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change the world. If this story has touched your heart, help spread kindness by sharing it with others. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories.